Hey guys, welcome back to the show. In this episode, I have a really special guest with us today. I've been following her podcast for a while now. As you all know, I've interviewed Alexa Curtis before, and that's how I was introduced to her podcast. So this is Skylar Sorkin, the host of the Regardless podcast. Hi, Skylar. How are you today?
I'm good, my love. Thank you so much for having me. It's so cool to just be chatting with a fan. And also, Alexa is one of my very close girlfriends. So the fact that you were introduced to me from her podcast is so rad. Such a full circle moment. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure to host you on the podcast. So please introduce yourself and maybe tell us a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. Yeah. I am the founder and podcast host of Regardless, which is the go to podcast for 20 something women who is navigating the chaos of her relationships, career, and well being. And a little bit about me, I had this aha moment in college where I was like, what in the world did I learn from school? Of course, I went to an amazing school and had an amazing educational background, but in regards to the life skills that I was really searching and looking for beyond my background growing up with my incredible family, my mom, who's a marriage and family therapist, and my father, who's an executive team coach, personal growth and staying curious. Was always at the forefront of my life. And I felt like in college, lecture didn't really embody or answer a lot of those questions. And so I kind of started to have this freak out moment where I was like, okay, what am I going to do with my life outside the walls of college? And how do I even know what my career path is? So that's when, like, the lightning bolt of literally this energy was charged and instilled in my body of like wanting and pushing for more. And I just started booking like 15 informational interviews a week, excuse me, 7 informational interviews a week with mentors. And those conversations started to introduce me to my mentors' mentors. And through those combos, I was learning so much more about a career path, about myself, about my friendships, about healing an eating disorder, to how to break up with a boyfriend, all of the things that really allow us to define what thriving in adulthood means. And that wasn't what I was obviously learning from the walls of lecture. And so that's when I really had this lightning, like this, I guess the light bulb went off and was like, okay, what if I was able to record these conversations with my mentors and share them with my peers? We would all be growing at such an accelerated rate. And so that's kind of when, like, the lightning bolt of, oh my God, it would be awesome to start a podcast. But then I kind of waited another year, and this was like my first year out of college. And I was literally pitching a Fortune 500 client, an older man. And this was, sales for an influencer marketing boutique agency. And of course, first job out of college, you don't really know what you're doing.
Mhm.
And no one knows what they're doing. And I just remember getting on that phone, and before they entered the Zoom meeting, um, I just remember being like, regardless of the result of this phone call, um, yes, regardless of the result of this phone call, I am so much more than my career. I am so much more than the result of this one meeting. And so that's when the word regardless was really born. And for me, I started to use that word in every aspect of my life, whether it was in my career, whether it was how to have a difficult conversation with a friend, how to heal a broken heart, to heal maybe poor body image or poor self talk or social media comparison, all of the hurdles that I think we are navigating as 20 something women in a very difficult time, which I like to call our quarter life crisis. So regardless is really answering all of these questions. Regardless is the go-to podcast for girls like me, for 20 something women who are navigating the chaos of her relationship with herself, the relationships with others, lovers, partners, friends, career, and well-being. And really, my mission is to remind women that regardless of what shows up, whether it's the fear of the unknown, the fear of losing what was, the fear of being rejected, the fear of not being enough, that regardless of all of those things, we've got this. And you can come to my podcast to get the resources, the real conversations, my lessons, my growth in real time, and also access to my mentors to remind you that you are not alone and we've got you. And so, Annika, where I'm at now is that I'm scaling the podcast into a larger platform, which I'm so excited about. And it is the go to platform, the one hub, verified space for women to lean on when they need another voice, when they need support, when they need those resources that I always had access to. And really, my mission is to bring that to the forefront of 20 something women. So that's a little bit about me and where Regardless is going and venturing into. We have a partnership now I've signed with the Los Angeles Tribune Podcast Network alongside names like Jim Quick, huge personal development junkie. And I've been featured on Apple Podcasts New and Noteworthy page twice. We have over 35,000 listeners. And honestly, I'm just here to reach as many women as possible to just I want them to know that they're not alone and they have me, they have my, ecosystem of support, and they have Regardless.
Oh my goodness. This is like amazing. I was like just like, listening. I want to make sure like I'm not interrupting you while you're talking because wow, I mean like the story, as a listener for the podcast, the Regardless podcast, right? You would just listen to it as like a normal human being, right? You do not think about the meaning behind it. You just listen to the podcast. If it replies to you, listen to it. And you go with it. And I'm not even in my 20s. I'm 16. I'm 4 years away from that. But I feel like the things that you go through as a 20-year-old is almost the same as what you would go through as a teenage, just in more amplified zone, like quarter life crisis. I feel like teenagers face that every day of their lives. It's just, on a smaller level or maybe a bigger level. We do not know. Everyone has like these stories or these things that they do. And I think with the podcast that you're running, I feel like it targets 20-year-olds, but then it kind of just spans over everyone. And I think what you're doing is amazing. Like Apple Podcasts, being signing to the LA Tribune, that's like amazing. Congratulations.
My love, thank you. And you are so wise. You said something very accurate that regardless of what age you are, right? We experience unknown, uncertainty, fear, all of it at any stage of life. I remember literally I was 16 years old, like what feels like yesterday. And even just shifting my perspective, looking back to 16-year-old Sky, I absolutely was feeling the same sort of stress that I'm feeling now, just in a different perspective, right? So, feeling like I didn't fit in high school, or to having my first kiss, that was scary, to like getting my driver's license, and now embarking on this new sense of feeling free and liberated, and you know being an adult. That's scary, and not having all of the answers or tools to figure out what that means. All of that, like, this is a universal language that we feel deeply at every age and stage in life. Like, there are 30-year-olds who listen to Regardless. There are 40, 50, 60. My grandmother, who's 90, listens to Regardless, and she's like, I can relate to this. I have you who listens in. And what I really want to create is this platform for women of all ages. And that, my love, Annika, that you can look to me, you can come onto the platform, and we're here to support you. Like, this is a conversation right now between your younger and your future self, right? Like, I can see my younger self in you, babe, and you can see your future self in me. And it's almost like right now, I get to kind of prep you in a way for your 20s. And once embark on your 20s, like, you have a platform who's ready to embrace you, right? So,
Mhm.
this platform is something that I think is universal. It's a full circle moment. It's a reminder that you're not alone. It's also a moment for your younger and future self to meet, which we're doing right now.
Honestly, I love the way you put it. I mean, I totally see that. I mean, in a way, we both have like the same like reason for starting the podcast. We want to help empower a group. I remember from my starting origin story, it was very, unconventional. It was like, I landed on the website, and for me, I feel like I oftentimes take risks. And so when I got this opportunity to, like, I was on the start podcast, but I could have very easily just left the page, but I decided to start one because like this could go places, I think. And so it
Mhm.
started taking up and doing things, and then I was like, how can I expand this? And interviews started, and then I started doing authors, CEOs for tiny little companies around the area, and then this happened, and I feel like everything happens for a reason, right? And your main focus on like regardless of this goes wrong, we still have XYZ plans. Or if this does goes right, like we never ask ourselves, does will this go right, right? We are always like, what will go wrong? And I feel like that is always something that can change the way you believe things. And with the podcast too, like my goal actually was for this podcast to reach young people, but surprisingly enough, my listener base is fully in the 20s. I was like, perfect, who would be the best person to talk about the 20s? And really anyone, Skylar.
You're so wise, and I can see why 20 somethings are listening in. And it's so true. I think we get really stuck in this kind of like negative Nancy or almost like a fixed mindset, when in reality, it's like, okay, regardless of things not going the way that I wanted them to, if this is working out in my best interest? What if I am protected? What if, regardless of this rejection or it not going the way that I thought it would, that everything is actually happening for me? I think instead of like, why is it not working? Why is it never working for me? It's more about like, what if it can be this? What if my life will be exactly the way that I want it to be? I just didn't expect it to turn out this way. So, Annika, like I could not agree more the way that you just phrased that. It's again getting out of that fixed mindset and really tapping into growth. And I think that is what is so powerful about the word regardless, is that it's not just this word, it's really this mindset. And it's honestly, it's a movement. It's a movement for women to come together. It's also an internal movement. It's a shift in your mindset. It's a shift in the way that you approach your life. It's a shift in the way that you approach adversity and how you see it, and how that, regardless of what shows up at our front door, how we handle the challenges and adversities and how we show up and how we rise. So 100%.
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, I like the idea of like, earlier on you mentioned like your platform as an ecosystem and, being an AP environmental science right now, ecosystems that like you think of like biomes and like animals and species and things. If you think about we are a species, we are the human race or the humankind, and there's so many of us. And if one podcast can create a change or one person can make a change, it's a collective effort, right? We can like we have Alexa, we have me, we have other creators out there who are like trying to achieve the same mission in different ways. And I think that's the power of the creator community. Like we have, with especially with the TikTok being banned, like First Amendment right violations is like pretty
Yep.
crazy right now, because TikTok may seem like a measly little app where people are just dancing and doing stuff, but there are often times where there are hard hitting topics. And I'm not on TikTok, but you can really see the impact it had on people, even for the few minutes of or few hours of it being gone.
Absolutely, my love. Yeah. And a lot of people's livelihoods are on TikTok. And I think TikTok, why it's so powerful is that the algorithm is really in favor for creators who are maybe newer and maybe who do want to monetize and express and share their voice and opinion, which, comes in two prongs. It can be very positive and impactful to our world, but also now anyone can have the mic. So I think what starts to happen is that us as women and us as human species, we have to be very protective and mindful of like the content that we're consuming, right? Like what is harmful, what is actually productive and helpful to our mental health, and where are the places and the voices that we can go to where we are held, we are supported, we are challenged. And that's what I really want to create through Regardless, that it's like, it's real, it's raw, it's authentic, it's verified. This is where you come to get real content that has your back, that will challenge you, that we are staying curious, but at the same way, there's no BS. And these voices are verified by a woman who gets it and who wants to support you for, the better good of society.
This is exactly it. I feel like you definitely hit the nail on that one, partly because, I feel like every influencer these days has a podcast. Like Khloe Kardashian recently got one.
Yeah.
And we have, I'm trying to think who else has a podcast. Well, I mean, actually, Khloe Kardashian is a good example. Her podcast is doing well, and she's actually doing pretty well. But like, I don't think I'm not gonna call out names to be honest. But like, this podcast is not even that big to actually reach those people. I mean, it might be because I mean, but like what I'm trying to say is that a lot of people with podcasts, like almost every person who's famous is like, cool, I'm starting a podcast. But when do they really have that? Like for them, it's the money, oftentimes, or it would be some other external factor that it's not about helping. Oh, I'm gonna be helping these people. Like for example, for you, your goal is to help people in their 20s or help women and empower them and teach them something. But for them, it's like podcast is a new trendy viral thing that's going on. I'm just gonna jump on this bandwagon and do these things. And so I feel like when that is your focus or that's your motivation for starting a podcast, it kind of deviates from the main ideas. And that's where like innocent people, innocent young girls and women are being targeted in a way that they start believing the BS that is being put on them.
It's a great way of putting it. You are extremely articulate for your age. You should be very proud.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah, I'm very impressed with you. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, my love. But also I do want to hold space for podcasts whose intentions aren't to empower people. And I also think empower is such a vague word, and you can empower through art. You can empower through entertainment. You can empower through humor. You can empower through education. You can empower through sport. So I think, again, it all comes down to intention. And I think with social media, there's space for everyone, which is why it is so powerful. But I do think that it is a slippery slope where anyone again can have the mic. I mean, if we look politically at our world right now, it's unfortunate to see what's unfolding in front of our eyes. And I don't mean to get political, but that's a very good example of how someone in power or someone who has a mic can really say whatever they want at the expense of other people. And so that's why it's really up to us on an individual level to be very mindful about the content that we're consuming. And it's not to take away from other people who are wanting to have a voice on podcasting, but I have to say, like, woman to woman, it can be really challenging to know that your intention is to impact, is to support women and empower them through resources, education, um good content, good-willed content, and to start something from the ground up without having that following or celebrity following already. When you see a lot of other people start a podcast because they're jumping on the bandwagon or because they're doing it because it's the cool thing. So again, I think it can be hard because you both, how much time goes into actually curating, designing, leading, producing a podcast. That, yeah, it's a not an easy career, but I do think that on an individual level, what I want you guys to get from this is that, like, we all have the power to curate our feed.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. I feel like, the main thing that I kind of took away from this is like, we I've seen a lot of podcasts where like it's a really good episode, like even if it's by celebrity, right? It is a very good episode, and then we see that like we have one episode in January 2023, right? And it's 2025, no new episodes. So like, that's something like, if you are gonna start a podcast, I know things get in the way. I know even I fall behind sometimes, but giving people a heads up or even just like, you know, trying to keep a schedule pod episodes. I know sometimes I schedule the episode to set like to be put out sometimes. So I feel like that's one thing about creators is that, you start something they don't really pull through with it or finish through. So what's your last kind of advice, if you will, for people who either struggle with staying accountable for whatever they're putting out or just really anything in general?
Yeah, you know what? Again, I think it depends on like your goals, right? It's such a personal question. I think if you want to be a podcaster full time and you want to monetize it, that's very different than doing it because it fills you up and you like to do it in your free time. I think if you do want a serious career from podcasting, consistency is going to be everything. And for me, I guess I am a perfectionist, which is a superpower, but also there's absolutely a dark side to that. And consistency is my friend because it's gotten me to where I am today. And you know, quite honestly, being a podcaster and monetizing it, it's taken lots of grit and working on the weekends. But for me, it's been very worth it because my intention is to be doing this full time. But if for someone listening who's like, I want to dip my toes into it and I do it because it fills me up and it's more of a passion project and it's a way for me to create lead gen and maybe build my network, then you know what? Do it when you feel called to do it. And also, it's super cool because it starts to become this digital diary for you that you now have and you can share with people. So, again, I think this is a very personal question and it does come down to the individual's intention and really perspective around their why. So, get very clear on your why. And then I think the steps to getting to the why will become a lot clearer for you.
I love that advice. I feel like, the why, so the question why is often seen as like a tiny little question, but when you ask why, like, why are we doing this? Like, I remember I spoke about this in my previous episode, and I think just asking yourself those questions are really important. Sometimes we forget to do that, and I think it's just really cool. Like, everything you've said is really important. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course, of course. I'm so happy that you find it helpful.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Skylar, for coming on the show. I had a great time chatting with you.
My love, thank you so much for having me here. You are incredible. The fact that you're 16 years old and you started this digital diary, but also an amazing, thought provoking, and intentional podcast at your age is so inspiring. And literally, your future self is thanking you in dividends. And I'm just so proud of you. And regardless of the result of this, the skills that you are creating and cultivating for yourself through this platform will pay off in dividends. So I'm just so proud of you. I know your future self is proud of you. Don't stop. And I'm here for you. You're freaking awesome.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Thank you
You're
so much again.
very wise, babes. Never, never dim your light. You're killing it.
Thank you so much. Everyone listening to this episode, this is Skylar Sorkin, the host of the Regardless podcast, and overall an amazing woman. I hope you all enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you all next week. Anika Goyal out.